Here to set the stage for the fall sitting is the government's House Leader, Steve MacKinnon. Hi, Minister. Good to have you back in studio.
It's great to be back.
Feels like no time passed at all.
Well, we had a good summer.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about what the fall will look like, and in particular against the backdrop of that major projects announcement. Reuters is reporting this week that your government may scrap the emissions cap on the oil and gas sector. Is that true?
Well, I'm going to let the ministers responsible do that. But one thing is that needs to be made very clear is that this is a government very focused on the economy, very focused on giving opportunity to Canadian young people, to creating opportunities from one coast to the other, to diversifying our export markets, and allowing people to dream big about the possibilities of this country.
I'll be blunt, is that at the expense of the climate?
No, Canada is going to continue to be a world leader in climate technology, in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, in decarbonizing the fossil fuels that we do extract and export. Canada is going to be a leader and going to continue to develop clean energy sources. You saw the world's first small modular nuclear reactor is going to be built in the province of Ontario with Canadian labor. We are going to develop hydroelectricity. We're going to develop wind power projects. You saw all of these things. Canada and renewable technology are going to be synonymous, and we're going to be exporting our expertise all over the world.
So that sounds like exactly what the Conservatives would have told me a year ago, right? We actually believe in climate change and we want to reduce emissions, but we're going to do it through technology and some made-up word like decarbonizing oil, right? All you can do is sequester the carbon from the process of oil. It doesn't get rid of what happens at the other end, right?
It decarbonizes the extraction, and we're going to be pumping carbon, literally pumping carbon into the ground.
On the other end of that, that oil still gets used. That oil still gets used. My point is this. If you're reconsidering the emissions cap, that's about 34% of the reductions at the top end by 2030. You've already scrapped the consumer carbon tax. The EV mandate is on pause. That's another 3%. The clean fuel regulations are being reviewed. That's another 4%. Like, I'm not a math genius, but that does not add up to your 2030 targets. We
have a goal, an ambitious goal, to be net zero by 2050 in this country. We're going to continue to work towards that. And Canada is going to be a leader among all countries in promoting renewable energy technologies and in, yes, taking greenhouse gases out of the system.
You are the House Leader, so you're in charge of the legislative process and the legislation. You will know that there is a Bill C-12, the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act that was passed into law by your government under the previous iteration. It doesn't just say net zero by 2050. It explicitly lays out targets for 2030, 2035, and 2040. Why won't your government just be straight with Canadians and admit and concede that what you're pursuing now will not get you to the 2030 targets?
Well, the Environment Minister and other ministers will, at the appropriate times, come forward with the various projections and updates. This has always been assumed to be an iterative process. We are continuing to build the technologies. The world is continuing to build the technologies that are going to allow us to get our greenhouse gases down and to reverse the effects of climate change. Canada is no less a leader today than it ever has been.
That's factually untrue, though. You've abandoned policies
in those
that would have
areas.
got us to our target.
Well, we're going to have an aggressive climate policy. Our climate policy will always be ambitious. Canada is going to be a technology leader, and we're going to continue having realistic regulations that allow us to have a prosperous economy, but continue to make a supreme effort on the environment.
Do you concede that under your previous government that was not the case? The regulations that were in place did not allow for a prosperous economy. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think we've had an election where we discussed the various obstacles to nation-building projects in renewable technologies, nation-building projects in conventional technologies, and we're going to be pursuing that path of economic growth, no question.
Just to put a final point on it from a legislative perspective, are there any plans to this fall repeal any of the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act?
We have incredibly good plans for this session, Vashi. I'm going to let ministers talk about the various pieces of legislation they're coming forward with. There's going to be legislation dealing with crime. There's going to be legislation dealing with immigration. There's going to be, obviously, the budget as the centerpiece of our economic efforts. This is going to be an incredibly active session because Canada is at a very real pivot point. We're incredibly challenged by wars in Europe and the Middle East. a tariff war imposed by our closest neighbor. We have to get to work on some big things in this country. And yes, we have to fix some things, and we'll be fixing them. This new government is going to have a very, very ambitious set of proposals that we're going to be putting to the opposition. We're in a minority parliament, and we're hoping that they will, like we will, put our shoulders to the wheel and cooperate, and that we don't see the kind of obstruction that resulted in a lost session of Parliament this past year. I think Canadians are demanding better.
Will, in that vein, are there any sort of formalized agreements or semi-formalized agreements between your party and other parties, or will it be a negotiation on an ad hoc project, piece of legislation by piece of legislation basis?
I've extended my hand to Mr. Scheer, to Madame Normandin, to the New Democrats. The policy is an open door policy. If they have amendments or suggestions or policies that they wish to pursue, we'll put them together with the relevant ministers and see what we can get done together. I think Canadians are expecting that. Conservative MPs tell me that they want to get to work on some of these things. And Mr. Poilievre, too often, has viewed a bad day in Parliament for the government as a good day for the country. Well, I don't think Canadians see it that way.
I mean, they supported your C5, your marquee piece of legislation in the last
yes,
sitting.
Mr. Poilievre wasn't in Parliament during that, so we absolutely...
Do you expect a change
we
because
hope
he
that
is?
his return to Parliament won't represent a departure from that very, very good spirit that we had in the spring, where we were able to get some good things done together.
You mentioned the budget, and I do want to ask about that, because I think there are a lot of Canadians who, as you mentioned, are at a very critical juncture right now, facing massively increased costs. I think StatsCan showed 27% jump as of July in the price of groceries compared to 5 years before. They're now worried with rising unemployment about losing their job. The Prime Minister has characterized this budget as one of austerity and investment. What does austerity mean?
The government has to make some choices. We have a large deficit. The government has run a large deficit since the pandemic, where we were there to support Canadians, and now we have some choices to make so that we can get our finances in control. All Canadian households are being asked to review their budgets and choose the important things that they can spend on. Governments are no different. This government is indeed going to have to make some difficult choices as the fall budget approaches, and we'll be presenting that in a plan this fall. There is a large deficit, and we have to get it under control.
You indicated, though, during the election campaign, which was only a number of months ago, that key things that Canadians rely on, like transfers to people and provinces, dental care, child care, pharmacare, would not be touched. You also indicated in that election book, or that election campaign, in the platform, that you would only not cut the public service. Will you honor that promise?
Look, the public service I represent a significant number of public servants.
Part of why I'm asking, yeah.
My riding is just across the river, and these are real people with real families doing real work on behalf of Canadians. And so that exercise will be one where we decide what are the important things for government to be doing? How can public servants best contribute to that work? We're going to have a bunch of difficult decisions to make with respect to programs, but we're not going into this with a view to reducing headcount. We're going into this with a view to assessing the appropriate role for the federal government in various parts of the economy. But let me come back to where you started this question. It is not the time. We are in a time where Canadians are finding affordability to be a real challenge. We've put in place things like dental care. We've put in place child benefits, child care, which has helped families across this country with literally tens of thousands, in many cases, of dollars of savings in respect of child care. There are a number of measures that are put in place that are helping Canadians weather this affordability crisis, and we're going to continue supporting them.
Just finally, though, I'll be blunt. Again, the math doesn't add up. In the campaign, you promised to, your party and the Prime Minister promised to close a $15 billion annual gap in spending and revenue. This year alone, 10,000 fewer people are working for the public service, and you're still spending $1.5 billion extra dollars. The line item is $71.5 billion. You're still going to keep all the programs, all the transfers. Like, how on earth are you going to achieve that goal that you set out unless you're going to abandon it?
There are, I make no bones about the fact that there are going to be tough choices.
But what does that mean? Like, I think there are Canadians worried about what that means for them.
We have to get the government, well, we can continue pushing this deficit down the road onto the backs of younger Canadians, or we can make some hard choices now that would only be harder tomorrow if we were to put them off, and come out supporting Canadians, growing our economy, and having a federal government that works for people.
But you won't cut public service jobs, and you won't cut any other program. Like, how does that add up to $15 billion? Well,
again, I'm not going to reveal the contents of the budget. The finance minister will have answers to those and other questions as the fall goes through. I do not want to sugarcoat the fact, though, that tough choices will need to be made, and this is a government that's prepared to make them in the interest of creating a future for our young people, in the interest of supporting those who are most vulnerable, and yes, in the interest of keeping those programs like health care and other investments that we continue to make and that continue to distinguish our country, and keep in preserving those investments for now and into the future.
Just very quickly, is that budget still tracking for October?
It's for October, yep.
Okay, thank you,
We'll let
Minister.
the finance minister reveal the date.
All right, we look forward to it, Minister. Thank you very much for making the time. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.